Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Trust and Estates Weekly. I had to think about that for a moment. Mine was somewhere else. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about all the various matters related to estate planning, administration of trusts and probates, and all of the numerous details that are involved in those, both from a standpoint of handling your own trust and estate matters, as well as being professionals like my guest and me, who help other people take care of such things. So if you're a longtime viewer of the show, you know my guest, Hillary Cooper. She's been on, I think, twice before, if memory serves. Hillary is the president of Uncluttered, located in New York City. You live in Manhattan, right?
I do. On the beloved Upper East Side.
There you go, the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And, without further ado, I want to get right into our topic, because Hillary and I have a tendency to talk way past the point at which we should probably sign off. So, Hillary, first of all, thank you for coming on the show again today. How are you doing?
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you for having me again. I think this is time number 4, actually.
Oh, is it number 4? Okay. Well, so, no one has ever accused me of being able to count well. So
we're into a series. I like to think of it like that.
There you go. There you go. So our topic for today is prepare for downsizing. And we've talked, I know, in the past about how just all the stuff accumulates, how people can tell if any of the accumulation has any value. We did a show from your friend's store who sells antiques and such.
Yeah.
In talking about a follow-up show, I loved this idea that you have of why do we want to wait until a person has passed away, or there's been some other crisis that now requires, in essence, other people to deal with it. Let's prepare in advance for the inevitable downsizing. So talk with us, if you would, for a few minutes. What are the likely situations where people can kind of get ahead of the curve on dealing with all the stuff that otherwise would be left to their children or their heirs, or the people administrating their estate dealing with?
Well, I think the best way to start is small, to tackle sort of a 30-minute a week project, where it can be something like through your front hallway closet. Do you have things that you never hung up on your walls that maybe your kids would have, would take if they had a chance to see that they were actually there? Maybe it's valuables such as fur coats or cashmere scarves or sweaters, something like that. I'm now definitely sounding very East Coast centric with talking starting with a hallway closet, but anywhere in your house that is a spot that sort of feels like it's been neglected, whether it's your attic, your basement, your what you keep under your bed. You never know, people keep stuff underneath there, whether it's a collection that you've been handed down. I'm dealing with someone right now that's foremost on my mind, stamps and coins. People tend to put those in boxes and leave them on a shelf, and those are the first things that probably hold most value when I bring somebody over to take a look at collections. And great way to start small. A box that you haven't opened up, you haven't looked at, and then there's obviously the inevitable photo albums and paper trails that we all keep because we're not quite sure, when we can actually, just items, the 7-year rule for tax forms or any other sort of financial papers and that kind of stuff. But papers take up space and they add a lot of clutter per se. But the way to start, I think, is a feel-good project. are things that you can actually amortize. So if there's something there in your closet that you actually have put off, it's a great way to lure the kids and grandkids in. You were
Mm,
a holiday and say, can you give me a half an hour? Let's go look at a couple of collections that I've had sitting here. And that's anything. Again, comic books, it's whatever it is that you might have collecting dust, and it might have been from a prior generation that handed it to you, is a great start because it's really wonderful just to kickstart it by actually
mhm,
being sell something of some sort of value. And then, the lure is, okay, if we can sell it, then you guys get to keep whatever the proceeds from the sale of that is.
mhm,
Tackling the larger projects, everybody seems to have a storage unit somewhere, somehow, some way
mhm,
over time. And you find out that you're spending a lot of money to keep a storage unit going for a year, 2, 3, 5, 10, whatever. And
right,
you can try to lure your children and your grandchildren, friends of the family, what have you, in to take a storage unit. Because there's probably goodies in there that you've forgotten about. And if they're not, then at least you set the storage unit free. You're no longer paying monthly maintenance on where there's nothing really of value there. But truly because you forget. We all move house to house. We think, oh yeah, I'll need that sofa someday, or absolutely have to hold on to that. But if there's silver china or anything that's valuable in there, what better time and what better way to start than at the beginning, so you can really things and feel really good about starting this project. Just to give yourself a little bite at the end of the time, so to speak. And then I would say from there, after you start with sort of the hidden secrets and that everybody has them somewhere, again, it could be your jewelry box, going through that, seeing how you want to allocate jewelry, calling your grandchildren and your children and saying, like, who wants to see you wear it? And then actually going and redesigning things, because a lot of times you have a brooch from your grandmother from the 1920s, you're never going to wear it. But if it was put on a pendant, that could be a great way in which to incorporate it and keep the memory alive. I've done that with a lot of clients' jewelry. And also, again, with even with fur, people that just don't feel comfortable wearing fur. But it's great if it's been taken care of. It can be turned into a throw pillow or
mm.
like sofa or something that is pretty and useful and the kind of thing that you wouldn't normally ever buy. But if it's sitting there, you may as well take advantage of it and repurpose it for something.
So, I mean, I'm dealing with a situation right now where one of the assets I'm administrating is actually a business, and um, the offices need to be moved. And we realized actually about 6 months ago that there are records that have accumulated for literally 40 years. There are two storerooms full of filing cabinets, right? And so we've been spending the time since then digitizing the records that the company needs to keep, right, and creating a records retention policy, and then figuring out, okay, what are we going to do with the rest of this? And I finally told them, yeah, we're going to hire a company to come out and shred it all, right, and just get rid of it, because there's no point in either A, storing it, or B, taking it to a new office where we're just paying for additional space for filing cabinets of files that will never be used. So what about a situation where there may be multiple locations, whether it's a business location and a residence or multiple residences? I mean, it seems almost overwhelming. Um, what do you recommend people do about that, especially if they're not typically in one of the locations very often, or maybe it's something like a business where they were involved with it, now maybe they're sort of emeritus chairman of the board or something, right?
Well,
And yet all of these things impinge potentially on the heirs.
no, for sure. Well, the mobile shredding companies, and we use them. They're all over the country. Come on, right? Obviously, they pull up with their unit right on the property, and they go through everything with you. But the best way to, I think, again, it goes back to your trust and estates attorney. Having somebody that you trust to just make sure that everything that's in there can be shredded. And it's the shredding process is actually very quick. I mean, I've seen 300 square feet of paper shredded in, inside 2 hours. So, and then not readable, and it's not, ever, traceable or what have you. So it's exactly the way to do it. It's like wiping a computer machine with, using a computer technician. It's never going to go anywhere. It's a great way to start. I mean, the easiest first step is for things that you can actually discard. The harder part are the things that you're not sure. The things that maybe if, when, someday, those are the harder, the emotionally attached items that somehow, some way, the silver might not really be worth anything. It might be plate. It might not be sterling, as we talked about in our last episode. But you still want to remember your grandmother, and your grandmother used it and treated it well. And when you're a kid, you don't know the real and plated silver, but remember it being on her, on her dining room table when you had a fancy dinner. So those are a little bit more of a gray area. But again, I think the best thing to do is really have a trusted friend with you, and this is where Uncluttered sort of is the trusted friend, where we can really say realistically, how often are you going to use a 12-piece, person setting? So you're looking at many forks, many spoons that are not, really silver, and they're plate. How are you going to use those? How are you going to incorporate that into your life? Well, if you're willing to get rid of all the other stuff that you have currently, and you just want to use it on a daily basis, I, by the way, am all for. I drink my morning coffee in my Tiffany coffee cups from, it was my wedding gift from my ex-in-laws, because I think, why not? If not now, when?
Right.
Think of the platinum band Tiffany cup. It's a great way to start the day. And they're, retail value on those things are probably $90. I'm not buying a $90 mug to have my morning coffee, but it's sitting in my cabinet in my kitchen. And will my daughter ever want it, or my son? Probably not. So I may as well start using it now, because, like I said, if not now, when? But the easiest thing is the things that you can get rid of. You're moving, you're buying a mattress. That mattress needs to be discarded. You're moving, you're buying a bigger bed. Those linens need to go because they're not going to fit on your bed. Going to from one office to a next, shredding paper feels really good. So those are the feel good projects, alongside of how you can actually monetize things that might be sitting in a closet in your house, or downsizing a storage unit, so you can actually feel good about getting rid of that monthly bill, and you now know what it's always the task. I don't remember what's in there. The box on the top of your shelf, all the way to the left, requires not just a step stool, but a tall person. It's the highest possible corner. Or frankly, the photo albums. I think that's very generational. That's a lot of people's grandparents. If you're in your 50s now, 60s, your grandparents collected photo albums. And what do you do with those? You feel like you're throwing away a memory. And this is part of the uncluttered process. We really make you feel like you're not parting with a memory. The memory is here. The memory doesn't actually have to be in a book. And that's where we digitize people's, all their keepsakes. And a great gift to my father towards the end of his life, he would log onto his computer every morning, inevitably to watch the news, see pictures of my kids and my nieces and any member of his family, that he had photos of growing up, or just, during different of his life. It was such an uplifting way to start the day. And, savers, you can program your computer. They can change every 3 seconds, you can evolving. You can have thousands of literally as a screensaver. And what better way to make you feel good in the morning than do life in photos, versus having dusty photo albums, in a storage someplace outside of New York, costing you a few $100s a month, where you never get to enjoy them. And I'll guarantee you this: your kids are never go out to the storage unit to pick them up voluntarily. They're not going to. But if you make it easy for them, this is what we always say: we do the job that nobody wants to do. And if you make it easy for your client to incorporate some of these wonderful treasures and memories into their everyday life, we've done our job. And that's exactly that. So not only are you streamlining, but you're really preserving a memory by digitizing a photo, by seeing it all the time. The human brain only handles so much. We forget after a while. Also, why not use what you have? Sometimes you'll think, oh, let me go buy another piece of art for my living room. And then you go to your storage unit and you actually something there that you haven't remembered in a while, or it could be a great way, could be a great gift, great way to,
Mhm.
you know, family or friend, you know, here you go. Here's something from my archives, and it meant so much to me, you know, and you reframe it, or you know, somehow steam it or clean it off professionally, and all of a sudden it's a brand new item. But more than that, it's given with heart. You know, it's given with purpose, with intention, and it's given with memory, which is, I think, you know, the absolute best kind of gift.
Yeah. I mean, as you're talking about these things, I remember that this is, gosh, could be 10, 15 years ago. My mother digitized pictures that she had going as far back as my grandparents or great grandparents. And then she, sent them out to all of us. And I frankly would never have gone to the trouble, but it's really been um, wonderful to have, those pictures of, for example, my, grandfather, my maternal grandfather, standing in front of a statue at Yale and that kind of stuff. But so kind of dovetailing on that though, how can one, or how would you recommend someone handle a situation where their children or their grandchildren, they're just not interested in being involved in helping downsize, or maybe look, they're too far away, you live in New York and your children live in, California. They're not going to come over for half an hour and, help you out because that involves a, 5-hour plane ride, one way. Right. So how can people deal with that kind of situation?
Well, I could first say call us, you know, call us at uncluttered.me, because we have resources all over the country, and I have, you know, trusted people that I could refer to a job, even if it might not be in my geographic location. We work up and down the East Coast, but if it's someplace outside, if it's, you know, West Coast related, I can absolutely refer you to somebody. There's also a wonderful service that I actually just started a collaboration with, and they actually sit with you and tell them your stories, like reality stories of your life. You know, you could be in your 80s or 90s or what have you, and you'll dictate to them and actually put together your life story. And this is a really wonderful way to keep your memories alive, and also for your children and grandchildren and family and friends to be able to refer back to all the things that you had said to them. And again, you know, keep it in a log. But they can also do it with, you know, illustrations. They can take pictures that you might have had that are, you know, someplace up in that dusty box, and they can take it off. Another way to start. But I would say call us. I mean, we're specialists in this, you know, in this field. We do exactly that. You know, I always say I'm 90% unlicensed therapist, 10% unclutter, and that's because I understand the psychology of what it takes to let go. But we also understand the psychology of what goes on behind the decision making process. You know, what do I keep? What do I give away? And photos and memories that could all be put into almost like a modern day magazine, you know, where you could pass this around the dinner table, Christmas or Thanksgiving or Passover, what have you, is a great conversation starter. And it's a great way to keep in touch with your kids. You can make copies, give it to your children for birthdays or anniversaries or a special occasion when you get together. But this is another way that I'm finding to lessen people's paper trail, but more importantly, preserve the memory. And I'm happy to, anybody wants to reach out to me, I can put them in touch with this company. But I thought it was brilliant, you know, just a very simple way in which to keep, you know, to keep it accessible, the stories of
Mhm.
your life accessible.
Well, I'll put your contact information in the show notes as well. So if people want to get a hold of you, they can. So I'm going to take a break here for just a moment to remind people that this is Trust and Estates Weekly, one of the Way to Wow shows. And if you like what you're learning here, I encourage you to join our LinkedIn group. It's called Trust and Estates Experts, and you can just go to LinkedIn and search for the group Trust and Estates Experts, and click join. And when I see that pop up, I will be happy to admit you to the group. And the nice thing about the group is it gives you a place to ask questions. So if something comes up either that is outside of your area of expertise, typically we find there are other people in the group who can fill it in for you. Or maybe it is within your area of expertise, but you just want to run it by someone else to get their thoughts. So both of those are possible within the group, as well as if you have work that you're doing, content that you're making, I should say, on the topic of estate planning and trust and estate administration, always welcome to post it there. So my friend Lori Israel, who is one of the top people dealing with prenuptial agreements, which do play into estate planning. So you will see Lori posts from time to time in the group. So again, the group is on LinkedIn. It's called Trust and Estates Experts. And if you're interested in the subject and involved with it, I invite you to join. So my guest today again is Hillary Cooper of Uncluttered, based in Manhattan, New York City. And we're talking about preparing for downsizing. So Hillary, I imagine that you deal with people who are, getting on in years, so to speak. They may have a big house, and it's for various reasons it's no longer practical or feasible for them to remain in that big house, or maybe they need to go to assisted living or something like that. So and yet there's this big accumulation of personal property or cars or all these other things. So when it's not an issue of someone passing away, but it's more of a life transition that they're making, and it's time sensitive. What do you recommend for people in terms of dealing with it, especially if maybe they're kind of on the older side, maybe they're not as spry as they used to be, and so lifting and carrying boxes and all that kind of stuff, right? It's really a burden. What can people do? There's to make this transition more feasible, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Yeah, no, I would say, thank you, Kevin. I'd say about 70% of Uncluttered's business right now is transitioning seniors to assisted living from their apartments or their homes that they've lived in for upwards of 50 years. And that, of course, the first part of that is it is very physically demanding. It is not, a lightweight kind of job. So we have a team of people, depending upon the size of the job, and we call on our experts to come in first and help size up what items would be resold, if possible, if there's something there. As I said earlier in the podcast, start with trying to figure out a way to monitor something, makes everybody feel great. And then at Uncluttered, what we do is a proposal for the client on the amount of time and the scope of the job. And then from there, we then subdivide it into smaller jobs. We'll have a team that'll work on the living room, and a team that'll work on the bedrooms, and a team that'll work on the study or the den or what have you. And we work that way for a couple of hours at a time. I find that most people, seniors or the like, just don't really have the emotional bandwidth to do more than, maximum 3 hours at a time. Because it's, deal if you've lost a spouse or what have you. Everybody, you don't get to, we'll call it the ripe old age of 90, moving into assisted living facility in New York without having some hiccups along those 90 years. So it's going to take a little while to go through it, and we want to prioritize our clients' peace of mind and feel that if items have a story, we give them the opportunity to tell the story. Hence the collaboration with the company that does a book based upon your life story for you. That's again incredible. But that idea is that you can sort of transition to downsize as painlessly as possible. My company was built on transparency and honesty and integrity and compassion, because this is the hardest part of this is never making anybody feel that they have too much stuff. People, there's a bit of a shame to, sort of accumulation of things. And there shouldn't be, people like to, the Marie Kondo and the, what is it? The Swedish death cleanse, like that is, of the rage right now. well, is that everybody likes to think that they're a minimalist. It's like there's almost a sense of satisfaction in saying that you have less rather than more. It's come into my home. Oh, look, everything's put away. Look at my children's playrooms. There's no toys out. Look at my white shirts lined up, and then I have 10 navy blazers, and I have 3 pairs of jeans, and there's a bit of, I don't know, showmanship that goes along with saying that you have less, and I understand that completely. I mean, my path has been very different. I personally had to move many times with my kids after I got divorced, and I've learned to, and the kids have learned to buy the things that really don't well. And that's a tough lesson to learn when you're young. It's especially difficult to do when you're elderly. So the majority of my business now is towards seniors downside, which is why Trusted Estates Weekly I go to, because it's all about talking to trusted estates attorneys and real estate brokers and anybody there for the transition prior to downsize. And when people go and they tour these high-end assisted living facilities, the idea is that they're moving into a vertical cruise ship. You are
Mhm.
a lovely all one-bedroom apartment, because you're not meant to spend your time in your apartment. You're meant to spend your time in the common areas. And this is all the rage. It's Inspire, it's Coterie, it's Sunrise, it's all of these super high-end, the Atria, super high-end assisted living facilities that have everything starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, from any exercise class you can imagine. Most of them have pools. They all have PT on staff. And then from that, it's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Michelin chefs in the kitchen that are there just to make sure that the people that live there are as absolutely catered to as they can be. It's a wonderful way to transition from living by yourself, surrounded by your things, which at times most of us think give you comfort, but when you realize when they're not there and you're streamlined, what a great second chapter this could be. And that's the idea of these assisted living places. And there's book clubs, there's mahjong, there's all sorts of activities don't want you in your apartment. So most of my clients move in with as little as possible. And if there are things they have to hold on to, they go into the storage unit. But that's only after they've been really streamlined and curated by us as a team, because I don't want someone to kick the can. So, if you're taking a 3 bedroom apartment, you're moving into, a 500 square foot, beautiful, luxury high end assisted living facility. The last thing, and we don't do our job if we do that. If we take 25 square, put it into a storage unit someplace, then we've just, and the idea that, you start sooner rather than later is a timely process. And
Mhm.
you do it so that you don't feel rushed. You want to do it so that you enjoy the journey, tell the story. We have people on staff like myself and my colleagues, and they sit there and they listen. And we help you figure out how this is going to be a happy project. It's all about the psychology behind all of this, is that transition doesn't have to be bad. Transition can be great. Transition can set you free. And that's the key to this. Most people feel transition and they say, some changes on the horizon, that's not going to be good. It's with Uncluttered, the opposite. Our doctrine is that change is good. We'll help you through this. We will make, moving is up there with the top most stressful things, divorce, death, and taxes. So we try to pride ourselves on our corporate mantra of, how downsizing can truly be uplifting, let alone painless, but just uplifting, can be enjoyable, can be a trip down memory lane, be, documenting all of these wonderful, stories that you might have into either digital or, handheld book that you can pass along to kids. That's so much of a better way to look at it than, woe is me, I've got so much stuff to get rid of. And that's why, the collaboration with all of these wonderful vendors that I've been fortunate enough to come in contact with in the last 3 years have been paramount of importance to building my business, and I'm happy to share. And again, I know my contact will be in there, and I'm happy for any questions so I can help you. And if you're in a different part of the country than the Upper East Side of New York City, I've got courses, and I'm happy to share them with any of your base.
Great. So one last question, and then we're going to have to wrap this up. How often are you finding the situation where still both spouses are alive, and yet they're having to transition to another, and typically or perhaps smaller living situation, and yet the two of them are in conflict about what should be kept, what should be gotten rid of, and how how do you deal with that situation, right? Because if it's a married couple and an older married couple, you could be dealing with literally decades of hostility that's now coming out, right, as it plays out over this particular situation.
Luckily, I haven't had a lot of those moments, but I would say when it's a divorce situation, because I've had that too, when people are moving, they're sort of divvying up their items, and I've been called in by the divorce attorney to help them, navigate, who gets what is different than who wants what. You might have legality. Okay, well, he keeps the house and he gets most of the furnishings, or vice versa, or something like that. So we've dealt with some sticky situations in that regard. I mean, I find that the best way is to sort of divide and conquer. You could say to let's just well for argument's sake, we'll say there's an 85-year-old couple and they've been married for 55 years, and they're divvying up stuff because they're moving to jointly moving to an assisted living facility.
Mm-hmm.
Say that I would have the husband in one room with two members of my staff and the wife in another, and then we would come together after we sort of jotted down a list separately, compiled a list
Mm-hmm.
of what's important to keep and what they're okay to give away with. And then, it's like mediation 101 over here, right? You say, okay, well, what are your absolutes? What are you absolutely cannot get rid of? What are your maybes? And what are your, sort of the non-negotiables versus the non-negotiables is probably the best way to put it. And inevitably, there will be items, baby grand pianos. This is my hot ticket for the start of 2025. Everybody has a baby grand piano. And sadly, there's very little resale value. I'm just putting that out there to the universe. And it's really hard to even find a spot to donate. And I think that people that were sort of starting their families and their homes from the 40s all the way to the 90s felt that the piano was something that they had to have as a centerpiece in their living room, and
Mm-hmm.
how to play piano. And it's borderline tragic. I mean, Steinway, you guys, you can't do anything with them. But anyway, that is an aside. It's a great example of saying, the large items are much more difficult to divvy up. We never want anybody to be upset about getting rid of 3 sets of silver. So you can keep all 3 sets of silver. But what would you do? You'll serving pieces out of each one of them. You'll incorporate them into your daily life. You'll use them in your
Right.
rest of the stuff you'll give to your grandsons, your sons, your daughters. Take 6 forks. No one will say no. Take, 50 pounds for each chest of silver. That I understand saying no to. But if you make it small and you pass it along that way, that usually works. And I find that couples or people don't argue with that sort of mentality. So that's probably the long answer to your short question, Kevin, is the best way to do it is to divide and conquer and then come up with a list of non-negotiables and negotiables, and you work from there. But I think people in general just feel a great sense of relief when this process is done. And as it's happening, as it's transpiring, they also have a great sense of relief. So they work with us because they happily, because they feel good about letting go of stuff. And that seems to really be the key. It's a hard thing to stop. It's like a weight loss program, right? It's a hard thing to start, but once you get the ball rolling, my jeans are too big on me. After through 2 or 3 weeks, going to the gym is not a hardship, but it turns into a habit. And it's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing with parting with items. It's hard to start, but once you get the ball rolling, boy, open up a closet and say, look, I've got space and I can have guests over because I feel like my apartment or my home looks really presentable and I'm streamlined. And that gives you boasting rights, and it makes the process that much easier. Just get started. That's it. That's what we say every day. It's just start. Could be 10 minutes a day. Just clean out what's underneath your sink in your kitchen, old products in your bathroom. Just walk in with a big garbage bag and throw it all into recycle, and you'll feel that much better.
Very good. Well, Hillary, thanks so much for checking in with us today. It's always great speaking with you, and always an opportunity to figure out better how to deal with this. There aren't, I think, many people focused on this aspect of really estate planning, and then it becomes a huge burden in estate administration. I know I've got another estate where the decedent had two homes, and the heir frankly doesn't want any of the personal property, but the daughter of his longtime girlfriend is insistent that her mother get it, and it's like, okay, if you want it, you got to pay to take it away. And now, of course, they're having second thoughts about it, because what are they really going to do, right? And it would have been, frankly, much better if the decedent had dealt with it before he passed away, and sat down with the girlfriend and said, what of this would you like to have, and made a list of it, and did the same thing with his son, and this could have been handled in a couple of weeks, rather than we're actually, if you can believe it, in a court battle over this now, because that people go crazy about this stuff. So
better to start, as I always, my analogy, my grandmother, always better to give with a warm hand than a cold. Better to see the joy that people receive from getting your items while you're here, versus
yeah.
think about it. And it is, you touched on the last moment of our podcast conversation, is that it is very costly to get rid of items. It is
Mhm.
very, and the key is to, upend that by starting, sooner rather than later. All
Right.
of these companies are very, and also it's just god awful for the planet. So you're better off the shredding of things preemptively, the downsizing of your home, the selling of items, selling of collections. There's so many things that you can do to save this stuff to a landfill, and it's truly all of our responsibility to do that. But like I said, it's the uncluttered way. We do it with transparency and compassion.
Very good. Well, Hillary, again, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Always a pleasure speaking with you. And for that wraps things up for today. So first of all, I want to thank our live viewers for joining us. Always a treat to know that you're there checking us out. And I do want to mention again, Hillary's contact information will be in the show notes after the show posts on YouTube, so you can get in touch with her, and I know she'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, or refer you to somebody local if you're not on the Eastern Seaboard. So real quickly before we sign off, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military, and I'm going to be talking about how to convince your superiors to do something they don't want to do. And I'm going to be doing that through the career of one of the best known American generals, Billy Mitchell, famous as the father of American military aviation. So please join us for that. And then on Wednesday is a special edition of the Way to Wow show. It is Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And as is my custom, I'm going to be talking a little bit about his biography and reading one of his famous speeches. It happens to be his second inaugural address, which I think is a particularly apt talk for us to be listening to with what's going on in our country right now. And then on Thursday is my every other week show, Jiggers's Place. And we sit back at 5 p.m. Pacific time and have a cocktail, and we're going to be talking about relationships. And I have a question for you. What do you think is the most important thing about a relationship? And I think I'm hearing what you have in your head, and I'm telling you almost for sure you're wrong. So tune in on Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. We'll have a cocktail and we'll talk about that. So one last time, Hillary, thanks so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure talking with you. And And signing off as I always do, Marie, darling, you are my